Hello friends, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we will be discussing a module on the Integrated Child Protection Scheme. The objectives of this module are to gain an overview of the Integrated Child Protection Scheme 2014 with specific regard to the reasons for formulating the scheme, the objectives, the approaches, guiding principles and components of the scheme, to enable an understanding of how the Integrated Child Protection Scheme supports the effective implementation of the Juvenile Justice Act 2015, to enable an understanding of the need for the state to prevent children from getting into situations of risk and to support innovative need-based programs that meet the needs of these children. The Ministry of Women and Child Development launched the Integrated Child Protection Scheme in 2009, which was revised again in 2014. This scheme is intended as a vehicle to support the effective implementation of the Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection of Children Act 2015. The scheme consists of 4 chapters. Chapter 1, Introduction and Concept. Chapter 2, Service Delivery Structures. Chapter 3, Implementation, Planned Funding, Pattern, Outcome and Output Indicators. Chapter 4, Services and Other Activities. And Chapter 5, which contain the annexures. This module provides a very brief overview of the scheme and provides a basic understanding of the objectives, principles, target group and approaches. Approximately 19% of the world's children reside in India, where more than 1/3 of the country's population, that is around 440 million, is below the age of 18 years. The realization that India must invest resources in children proportionate to their huge numbers came after the Ministry of Women and Child Development conducted a child budgeting exercise, which revealed that total expenditure on children in the year 2005 to 2006 in health, education, development and protection together amounted to a mere 3.86%, rising to 4.9% in 2006-2007. However, the share of resources allocated for child protection in the budget has been extremely low at the time. That is a mere 0.034% in 2005 to 2006 and the same in 2006 to 2007. The Constitution of India, in recognition of the vulnerable position of children and their right to protection, guarantees special attention to children through special laws and policies that safeguard their rights in Article 15. Moreover, the right to equality, protection of life and personal liberty, and the right against exploitation is enshrined in Articles 14, 15, 16, 17, 21, 23, and 24. India also ratified the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child 1989 on 11th of December 1992, which lays down legally binding minimum standards for children, including standards for child protection. Child protection is about protecting children from or against any perceived or real danger or risk to their life, their personhood and childhood. It is about reducing their vulnerability to any kind of harm and ensuring that no child falls out of the social safety net, and those that do receive necessary care and protection and support so as to bring them back into the safety net. While protection is a right of every child, some children are more vulnerable than others and need special attention. The government recognizes these children as children in difficult circumstances, characterized by their specific social, economic, and geopolitical situations. In addition to providing a safe environment for these children, it is imperative to ensure that all other children also remain protected. Child protection is integrally linked to every other right of the child. Failure to ensure children's right to protection adversely affects all other rights of the child. Thus, the Millennium Development Goals, or the MDGs, also cannot be achieved unless child protection is an integral part of programming, strategies, and plans. Failure to protect children from such issues as violence in schools, child labor, harmful traditional practices, child marriage, child abuse, the absence of parental care, and commercial sexual exploitation, among others, means failure in fulfilling both the constitutional and international commitments towards children. The Integrated Child Protection Scheme is a centrally sponsored scheme aimed at building a protective environment for children in difficult circumstances, as well as other vulnerable children, through government, civil society partnership. It reiterates that the Ministry of Women and Child Development does not see child protection as the exclusive responsibility of this Ministry of Women and Child Development, but stresses that other sectors have vital roles to play. Therefore, the Integrated Child Protection Scheme, implemented as a government civil society partnership under the overarching direction and responsibility of central and state governments. The scheme envisions all concerned stakeholders coming together to work for a common goal, to create a protective environment for children in the country. The central government has taken on the responsibility for the development and funding of the scheme, as well as ensuring flexibility by cutting down rigid structures and norms. It has created an integrated, live, web-based database on children. The state governments and union territories are involved in devolution and utilization of funds, managing the database of children in their jurisdiction, identifying human resources on contractual basis, and strengthening public-private partnerships. At the level of civil society, the scheme envisions roping in the voluntary sector to provide various kinds of child protection services to promote awareness, conduct capacity development programs, and to engage in innovations and monitoring for which financial support will be provided. Research and training institutions are being brought under the scheme to not only conduct research, but to offer training and support the creation of a cadre of professionals. Media and advocacy groups are being supported to promote the rights of children, particularly on child protection issues. The corporate sector is invited to partner with government and civil society organizations to support child protection initiatives. Community groups, local leaders, volunteers, youth groups, families and children are also being roped in to provide a protective and conducive environment for children to act as a watchdog and a monitor for child protection services by participating in village and block level child protection committees, etc. The scheme brings together multiple schemes of the ministry relating to child protection under one comprehensive umbrella, while also facilitating additional interventions for prevention of harm and for protection of children. ICPS, the short form for the Integrated Child Protection Scheme, therefore institutionalizes essential services and strengthens structures, enhances capacities of all levels, creates a database and knowledge base for child protection services, strengthens child protection at family and community level, and ensures appropriate intersectoral responses at all levels. Funding available in the scheme largely enables the effective implementation of the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015. What are the specific objectives of the Integrated Child Protection Scheme? These objectives are to institutionalize essential services and strengthen structures for emergency outreach, institutional care, family and community-based care, counseling and support services at the national, regional, state and district levels, to enhance capacities at all levels of all functionaries, including administrators and service providers, members of allied systems, including local bodies, police, judiciary, and other concerned departments of state governments, to undertake responsibilities under the scheme, to create database and knowledge base for child protection services, including management and information services, and child tracking system in the country for effective implementation and monitoring of child protection services. Undertake research and documentation. Strengthen child protection at family and community level. Create and promote preventive measures to protect children from situations of vulnerability, risk, and abuse. Ensure appropriate intersectoral response at all levels. Coordinate and network with all allied systems. Raise awareness. Educate the public on child rights and protection, on situation and vulnerabilities of children and families, on available child protection services, schemes and structures at all levels. What are the guiding principles of the scheme? The scheme had laid down certain guiding principles, some of which are now also enshrined in Section 3 of the Juvenile Justice Act 2015, which results in these being fundamental legal principles that have to be applied while implementing the Act itself. Additional principles in the ICPS include prevention and reduction of vulnerabilities central to child protection outcomes. A major thrust of the ICPS will be to strengthen the family capabilities to care for and protect the child. Child-centered planning and implementation. Planning and implementation of child protection policies and service delivery should be child-centered at all levels so as to ensure that the best interest of the child is protected. Technical excellence code of conduct. Services for all children at all levels and by all providers should be provided by skilled and professional staff, including a cadre of social workers, psychologists, caregivers, members of statutory bodies, and lawyers, all adhering to an ethical and professional code of conduct. Flexible programming responding to local, individualized needs. Customized service delivery approach is required to respond to local needs. Good governance, accountability, and responsibility. An efficient and effective child protection system requires transparent management and decision-making, accountable and responsible individuals and institutions, performance reports at all service levels, and all service providers made public, including for children themselves, through child-friendly reports. What is the target group of the scheme? The ICPS focuses its activities on children in need of care and protection, children in conflict with law, and children in contact with the law, that is, a child who has come in contact with the law either as a victim or as a witness or due to any other circumstance. The ICPS also provides preventive statutory care and rehabilitation services to any other vulnerable child, including but not limited to children of potentially vulnerable families and families at risk, children of socially excluded groups like migrant families, families living in extreme poverty, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes, families subjected to or affected by discrimination, minorities, children of infected and or affected by HIV or AIDS, orphans, child drug abusers, children of substance abusers, child beggars, trafficked or sexually exploited children, children of prisoners, and street and working children. What are the approaches that are adopted through the ICPS? The ICPS adopts the following approaches to enable its effective implementation. Through outreach programs, the scheme identifies and supports vulnerable families, enables convergence of services, strengthening capacities of the community for protection and monitoring, and finally, enabling integration of child protection concerns and safeguards in all sectors. This aspect of the scheme is vital as the Juvenile Justice Act and other existing laws do not adequately provide for state intervention in this vital aspect, one that prevents children from getting into situations of risk or into circumstances that compel them to commit crime. Promotion of family-based care through foster care, adoption, and aftercare. Financing. Assistance from the central government under the scheme is disbursed to state governments and union territories. The central government provides predetermined percentage of the budgeted cost, and the state or the union territories has to in turn provide grant and aid to voluntary organizations under the different components of the scheme. Integrated service provision for a range of services. The scheme enables integration and convergence between various sectors involved in child protection, including health, education, the judiciary, the police, labor, etc. Another approach is continuum of services, feasible care plan for each child. The services to children are to be provided based on an individual care plan established through professional assessment. The care plan must be periodically reviewed and accordingly adjusted, and adequate services should be available to every child as long as the child is in need of care and protection. Another approach, community-based service delivery. Child care services should be available at community level with strong linkages to the Panchayati Raj institutions and local government bodies. Decentralization and flexibility to focus on local needs. The scheme envisions decentralized planning and implementation of child protection services at the state and district level, and that allocation of human resources are based on protection service requirements for quality child protection services. Another approach, partnership building and community empowerment. A key strategy for program development and implementation is developing close working relationships, information sharing, and strategy building between government and civil society, organizations, corporates, and communities. Quality care, standards for care and protection. All protection services, whether public or privately provided, should adhere to the prescribed standards and guidelines. Building capacities. Regular training and capacity building of all service providers and functionaries at all levels to build competence and sensitivity in dealing with children through a child rights approach. Monitoring and evaluation. The scheme envisions a child protection data management system to formulate and implement effective intervention strategies and monitor their outcomes. Regular evaluation of the programs and structures would be conducted, and course corrections would be undertaken. Service delivery structures at district, state, and central levels under the scheme. District level. District child protection units. In order to ensure effective service delivery, the ICPS is being implemented by setting up district child protection units as the fundamental units for implementation at the district level. Though the ICPS had envisioned the establishment of the district child protection unit in every district, it has now been brought under the Juvenile Justice Care and Protection of Children Act 2015, wherein it is now the focal point to ensure the implementation of the JJ Act and other child protection measures at the district level. The District Child Protection Officer is the nodal officer in the district for implementation of the JJ Act and the rules. Under Section 106 of the JJ Act 2015, state governments should constitute a district child protection unit consisting of officers and employees appointed by the government to take up matters relating to children with the view to ensure the implementation of this Act, including the establishment and maintenance of institutions under this Act, notification of competent authorities in relation to the children and their rehabilitation, and coordination with various officials and non-official agencies concerned, and to discharge other prescribed functions. What's happening at the state level under the scheme? A state child protection society is to be established at the state level to enable the effective implementation of the scheme. The SCPS is registered under the Societies Registration Act 1860 and functions under the overall supervision and control of the nodal department responsible for child protection in the state or union territory. State Adoption Resource Agency, or SARA. SARAs are to be established in order to support CARA, the Central Adoption Resource Authority, under the JJ Act, in promoting in-country adoption and regulating inter-country adoption to coordinate, monitor, and develop the work of adoption and render secretarial and administrative assistance to the State Adoption Advisory Committee. SARAs are required to liaison with the District Child Protection Unit and provide technical support to the Child Welfare Committees in carrying out the processes of rehabilitation and reintegration of children. What is the State Project Support Unit? State project support units are to be established to support the central project support units in ensuring effective implementation of the scheme, but will be phased out gradually once implementation of the scheme picks up momentum. These units are to report to the Central Project Support Unit and the Mission Director based at the Ministry of Women and Child Development, led by a Program Manager. Each State Project Support Unit is to have a team of professionals who work closely with the State Secretary and the Director concerned with the implementation of the scheme. What is the Central Level Adoption Resource Agency? What is the structure at the central level with regard to adoption? The Central Adoption Resource Agency, CARA, now Central Adoption Resource Authority under the Juvenile Justice Act, is to function as a central authority in all matters concerning adoption and to implement the provisions of the Hague Convention on Inter-Country Adoption 1993 in matters of rights, safeguards and procedures involving children that are orphaned, abandoned or surrendered. It is to function as an advisory body and think tank for the Ministry of Women and Child Development. We spoke about the Central Project Support Unit. This Central Project Support Unit is to be based in Delhi and works under the Ministry of Women and Child Development, functioning as the Mission Directorate and headed by a Mission Director, that is a Joint Secretary, Child Welfare Bureau, Government of India. The scheme also talks about and deals with the National Institute of Public Cooperation and Child Development, or NIPSID for short. The scheme envisages a cadre of skilled personnel across the country at all levels, as well as evidence-based planning and action on child protection issues. It therefore provides support for strengthening of NIPSID, which is the nodal agency under the scheme for building a knowledge base as well as enhancing capacities on child protection. Implementation plan and convergence. The Ministry of Women and Child Development is implementing the scheme at its Child Welfare Bureau. The Central Project Support Unit set up at the Ministry implements the scheme with the help of the State Project Support Units. At the time, it was envisioned that the State Project Support Units will be operational until proper implementation of the scheme and would be phased away in the 12th plan period. Since child protection is a complex subject and needs a comprehensive and multi-pronged approach, the scheme envisages convergence between all stakeholders and sectors that have a role to play at all levels in child protection. Now, what is funding pattern and fund flow in the scheme? The scheme, being a centrally sponsored scheme, is implemented through the state governments and union territories, with the bulk of financial assistance coming from the central government. The cost-sharing ratio for various components has been provided in the scheme and systems for fund flow have been laid down. Flexi funds have been provided and the procedures for disbursement clarified. The scheme also talks about outcome and output indicators. It lists indicative output and outcome indicators to enable monitoring and evaluation of the scheme. The scheme brings several existing child protection programs under one umbrella and initiates new interventions with the focus on mapping needs and services for children and families at risk, preparing child protection plans at district and state levels. The plan would be gradually extended to block and community levels, strengthening service delivery mechanisms and programs, including preventive, statutory, care and rehabilitation services, improving access to and quality of services provided, promoting and strengthening non-institutional family-based care options for children deprived of parental care, including sponsorship to vulnerable families, kinship care, in-country adoption, foster care, and inter-country adoption in order of preference, developing capacity of service providers, strengthening knowledge base awareness and advocacy, establishing an integrated live web-based database on children in difficult circumstances, children in care, service providers and services provided for evidence-based monitoring and evaluation, and service planning decision making. Monitoring and evaluation, building partnerships and alliances for child protection at all levels, particularly at the grassroots, community and district levels. Strengthening linkages with other bodies and institutions such as the National and State Human Rights Commissions and National and State Commissions for Protection of Child Rights, etc. Details of the exclusive service delivery structures provided for under the scheme are listed here below with brief introduction to each one of them. They include: the scheme envisages the expansion of the child line services to all districts or cities through establishment of additional mother NGOs, in addition to Childline India Foundation, to manage the service in various regions of the country, open shelters for children in need in urban and semi-urban areas. This program caters to the unique needs of homeless children, children living and working on the streets, substance abusers, child beggars, rag pickers, street performers, trafficked and runaway children, children of migrant population, children living in unauthorized areas, slums, children of socially marginalized groups, and any other vulnerable group of children. Family-based non-institutional care through sponsorship, foster care, adoption, and aftercare. The scheme supports the provision of 3 non-institutional rehabilitation services as provided for under the Juvenile Justice Act. Institutional services. Support for childcare institutions to be established under the JG Act. That is, children's homes, open shelters, observation homes, special homes and place of safety, as well as homes for children with special needs. Grant and aid for need-based innovative interventions. Support is also available for need-based innovative programs, which could be pilot programs, post-disaster relief work, etc. Statutory support services. The scheme also supports support for the establishment and effective functioning of child welfare committees, juvenile justice board, and special juvenile police units that are to be established under the Juvenile Justice Act. Other activities. The scheme also provides support for human resource development for strengthening counseling services, training and capacity building, strengthening the knowledge base, child tracking systems, advocacy, public education and communication, monitoring, audit, and evaluation. At the end of this module, you would have received a basic understanding of the Integrated Child Protection Scheme and how the funds available through the scheme aids in not only preventing children from getting into situations of risk, but also how it is a vehicle for the effective implementation of the Juvenile Justice Act 2015 and thereby strengthens the child protection system in India. In case you choose to, please do have a look at the reference material provided along with this module. Thank you.